It's Tuesday, the 9th of September, and here's your business briefing. We add a little more flavor to the reason why 91 Chief Executive Hendrik du Toit posted that very strong outburst yesterday on the state of South Africa. And the deal of the day around the world involves the South African-born Anglo American corporation. It's now going to get even less South African. It's merging with a Canadian business. Huge deal, huge transaction, and it also means BHP Billiton and Glencore can go hoes. Hulle kan nie om nie meer kry nie, nee wat. Then we are going to have a look at the real-life conclusion to that hit series Succession. And step in on France's political crisis, which some observers believe is going to be the end of Emmanuel Macron's reign at the top of the Fifth Republic. And then in South African company news from the Stock Exchange News Service, developments at SPAR and Super Group. And then we've got a tailpiece about how to become a mechanic, or indeed what happens in mechanic training. It's an absolute winner. But let's kick off first with the Hendrik du Toit story. Yesterday, we ran a LinkedIn posting from du Toit where he held nothing back in his unhappiness at the state of South Africa. Look out for an in-depth interview later today with my colleague Bronwyn Nielsen, where she has caught up with du Toit to find out exactly why he's so unenamored with the South African government, the state of South Africa, etc. Remember, this is one of the biggest companies in the country, and du Toit is the founder, so he has added heft when it comes to providing his views on things. But here's a little taster for you on why Hendrik is feeling so unhappy.
I think last week was an interesting week. I had time to read a few books. I read Jeff Weeks's book, The Shadow State, which I can recommend to everybody. And then a person I know very well, Professor Anton van die Kerk's son, Bouwer van die Kerk, was assassinated, as we all know, for essentially pursuing justice. He was an insolvency lawyer. And if you put two and two together, you realize that, and there was silence. There was silence from authorities. You know, these things, we become used to these things, they happen. And I think we have to hold our government to account to stop this rot, because, as you know, there are many good people in government. There are many, many good civil servants doing their job every day. But one of the victims was Babita Deokaran, who got assassinated for whistleblowing in respect of that huge corruption that happens and has been happening in Tembisa Hospital. And if we don't make a point of raising these issues and then expressing ourselves wherever we can, this is not going to change. And this was not party political. I was making no comments about any political party. I was simply referring to the state of our country and the fact that so many people are struggling to find jobs, but the economy is not delivering for the people of South Africa, and yet we're shooting ourselves in the foot and the head on a daily basis when we don't need to.
Shooting ourselves in the foot and the head on a daily basis. My late colleague Barry Sargent would be saying, yeah, I told you so. Decades ago, he warned us almost continuously, both in the newsroom and in the articles that he wrote, that the insolvency sector in South Africa, and he put it all down, laid it at the path of a politician called Penwell Maduna, who was the Minister of Justice. Barry said it was an accident waiting to happen. It was a ticking time bomb, he said. Well, here we are, decades later, and it has now exploded in a way that has resulted in the heinous murder of the son of a professor who was in that industry. I'm sure the family would have hoped that his death was not in vain. And Hendrik du Toit is very much saying that he will do what is necessary to ensure that happens. We will have an interview with Jeff Wicks. In fact, my colleague Chris Dane had one scheduled, but Mr. Wicks is a busy man at the moment with a bestseller. We will be having an interview, though, with him in the near future. Well, on to matters different, and this is the end, as it were, of South Africa's greatest company over many decades, Anglo American. Not the end of Anglo American, but certainly the end of the South African connection, or a degrading of it, a further degrading of it. This morning, the company announced that it is to merge with a Canadian business, also a highly historic business, but the head office is not coming to Joburg, it's going to Vancouver. Duncan Wanblad, the chief executive of Anglo American, will become the new CEO of the enlarged business if the deal goes through. About 2/3 of the equity will be held by Anglo shareholders, about 1/3 by the Canadian shareholders, and it'll be very focused on copper, around a 70% stake in the copper industry, one of the top 5 copper producers in the world. Here are our colleagues at Bloomberg describing the global context of this huge transaction.
Martin, just talk us about the significance of this deal and what we know about the detail.
Okay, I will start with the significance of this deal, which, as you said, it's one of the biggest mining deals in the past decade or more. This combines 2 major copper producers. Everyone in the mining industry is desperately looking for more exposure to copper. This creates a company that would be among the top 5 producers. And it comes obviously after last year BHP failed in its bid to buy Anglo. That bid turned out to be very complicated, protracted. Since then, Anglo has simplified its business. Teck has also offloaded some assets, and they're combining together to create what will hopefully be a cleaner, very copper-focused company, and that's what they very much emphasised in their release today. It's all about copper.
Martin, why does this deal work and others don't? Why does Anglo want Teck and not another business? What is it about this transaction that is different to all the other deals that have been talked about over the last few years?
There have been a lot of other deals, not just deals that that the executives have tried to make publicly, but also a lot of chatter about who should or could merge with who in the mining space. In 2023, we had Glencore trying to take over Teck. That turned out to be too complicated due to both the structure and the shareholding structure of Teck. BHP's bid for Anglo. That didn't come off again. These were 2 quite complex companies. It was a complex transaction because Anglo has a lot of different assets. Here we have a company, Anglo, that's already sort of downsizing itself, spinning off assets like steel, coal, like diamonds, like nickel, to focus more on its what it sees as its core business. Teck has sold coal as well. So these are companies which are much more solidly focused on copper, and it's a much more kind of simple proposition to the investors. I think the figure they're giving is 70% copper focused. The rest is mainly iron ore and zinc.
Earlier this morning, I attended the press conference where the announcement was made, and got the opportunity to pose a question or two to the CEO, Duncan Wanblad, about the South African angle of this mega transaction. Thank you very much. Just a couple of South African-related questions, Duncan, obviously for you. Have you spoken to your biggest shareholder, the PIC? And indeed, are there any requirements, any approvals needed from South Africa? And then 2 kind of ancillary things, any updates on De Beers? And does this deal have any impact on the long-term future towards Kumba?
Morning, Alec. Yeah, no, so of course we have spoken to the PIC. As far as South Africa is concerned, there are no statutory approvals that are required for this, but have spoken to various ministries in government about it. And as far as the PIC is concerned, we continue as per the original program. In the process of doing either a divestment or a demerger, but with the divestment looking more likely, and that's the pathway that we're on. What was the last question that you had?
Kumba.
Kumba.
Yeah.
No, Kumba fundamentally core and pivotal to the portfolio, progressing again there with the UHDMS project as we had announced.
And maybe a follow-up, what risks have you identified to this transaction?
Well, I guess the most significant hurdles we need to surmount are all the regulatory approvals from the time that we get through the vote to the end. Of course, a risk that exists in all sorts of mergers is actually the putting of the two companies together, the integration. And as Jonathan pointed out earlier, we are going to spend an enormous amount of time planning that out to the nth detail and be absolutely rigorous in its execution. I think that we're in really great stead here. One, because this is a merger, and that we are putting both companies together for the greater benefit, and as opposed to it being a takeover in any way, shape, or form. And secondly, I think one of us mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there are very complementary cultures that exist in this company, very similar views of what responsible and sustainable mining should and could look like in the world. And we think that, on that basis, we would be able to very materially mitigate any sort of integration risks, which generally intend to be the ones that bring these sorts of mergers down.
I was more thinking along the lines of a counterbid, of a hostile perhaps being resuscitated by BHP.
Oh, well, I mean, whether that's a risk or not is not going to stop us doing trying to do this deal because this is the right deal for our shareholders, as I mentioned earlier.
Thank you very much. Fascinating deal. It's a really big one. And, at one point in time, Anglo American was the big South African in the same way as BHP is the big Australian. But that has been dissipated over the years as our mining industry, sadly, has been in decline. However, Anglo's more than 100 years old. So is tech. So when Duncan Wadblad talks about the cultural affinities between the two, you'd anticipate that two historic businesses like this would, the people who work there would get on pretty well. But I suppose the devil's in the detail, and we'll watch with much anticipation.
Robertson, a small town in the middle of nowhere where a wine farmer claims to have sold a Volkswagen up to We Buy Cars.
A farmer.
What car did you really sell them?
A VW.
Right here in Robertson.
Small town, but we know about We Buy Cars.
Yeah, but what's a farmer doing with a VW up?
It was just a runaround.
Cool cover story. And I see you traded it in for this, like a double cab Renault. Were they all out of ranges?
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Well, here in South Africa, our multi-choice has got a relationship with HBO. So we do get all of the top international series hits, and one of the biggest hits of them, certainly for people who are interested in business, was one called Succession. It's a 4-season hit based on the Murdoch family. And this morning, a conclusion to the whole Succession saga was announced. Let's have a look at how our partners at Bloomberg reported it.
Ros, this has been quite the drama, hasn't it? Does this Succession drama then, for Rupert Murdoch, does it put this issue to bed once and for all?
Yeah, well, by and large, it does. As you say, this was going on for some years, real-life succession drama. But what we have now is a case where the other three kids, Prudence, Elizabeth and James, no longer, have those voting rights as part of the family trust. So they don't have that interest in the company. They're basically being given $1 billion each to walk away. And the concern had been, because they each had that voting right, that the three of them might band together to move against Lachlan at some point. And Rupert Murdoch obviously concerned they would take his empire in a different direction, perhaps move away from some of the conservative elements of things like Fox News and so on, and there would be a collective push there. That's off the table. Lachlan is obviously now free to run the company, possibly for decades to come. You can't imagine there's going to be cosy family dinners necessarily going on after all we've seen playing out in the courts. You don't know what the family dynamics are, but in terms of the business itself, this is now put to bed.
And to your point, this is a re-empowered Lachlan then, with this sole control, effectively, of this empire, this business empire. What are we watching? What do we expect him to do with all that power that he now has?
Well, certainly, like many companies, News Corp, Fox are adapting to a fast-changing media landscape. But he has put in a new streaming service at Fox recently, sports, media, entertainment. Fox One, over at the Wall Street Journal, he's moving to boost digital subscribers in the real estate business in Australia, digital advertising. You can see very much adjusting to a digital landscape across all the parts of the company. But it is a big, sprawling company. There are lots of other smaller parts to it. So does he take a look at some of that and say, do we need to shrink any of that down to really focus here on driving, a much more modern media outfit in a digital landscape?
We can't really think about these media assets owned by Murdoch and the Murdoch empire without thinking about the political impacts as well. How is it likely? What are the potential political ramifications of this power?
Well, particularly in the US, obviously, where Fox is a juggernaut and has had a boost with Donald Trump being back in the White House and back in the limelight, and their ratings have gone up as a result. However, even that is a fragmenting landscape. You have Donald Trump inviting all kinds of influencers, podcasters into the White House, getting press passes, massive followers, and he's talking to them very directly. He's also had some falling out with individual Fox anchors, and so it's not all sunshine and roses there either. I mean, obviously, Fox is the biggest player in this space. This removes the prospect of Fox, moving away from its conservative roots, and that had been, again, Rupert Murdoch's concern. But even there, you're going to have a shifting landscape where how do you counter all these rising individuals who are being just as popular?
Well, how interesting is that? Real life on the screen, and it's now come to a conclusion. So, the way that story ended. We're not sure how the next one's going to end. Things are going crazy in France at the moment. It is now the third prime minister in a very short period of time that Macron has got to look for. And whether or not he's going to be able to make this one stick is anybody's guess. Macron is the president of France. His own security is looking increasingly fragile. Let's pick up on this story with Bloomberg.
Who can the president then rely on? Who is Macron likely to reach out to for this premier role now?
Well, of course, the most important is that he acts really quickly. A lot of people within his entourage are saying he should really do it really soon. He said last night within the next few days. Will it be today? Will it be after tomorrow? Because tomorrow we have a national day of rallies planned with the far left calling to block the country. Now, it is possible that he will remain with a centrist figure, such as, for example, Sébastien Lecornu, the Armed Forces minister who's been cited. The problem with that is, of course, opposition parties are going to say this is going to be the same policies of Emmanuel Macron. So, of course, the socialists, they now say they want the job. Olivier Faure, the first secretary of the Socialist Party, was on television after the confidence vote last night saying we are ready. Macron should give us a chance to govern. Of course, the problem with that is that Macron's camp is going to lose the support of some of the moderate right Republicans. Bruno Retailleau, the current interior minister, was also on TV last night after the confidence vote saying he's not going to join any socialist government. Gabriel Attal, who is obviously leading the MPs group of Renaissance Party, Macron's party, here at the National Assembly, said in his speech yesterday at the National Assembly that they should try and work together, have some kind of non-aggression pact in order for the socialists and the centrist camp to not make the next prime minister collapse, especially when there is a need to pass a budget before the end of the year. But the problem is that in France, this coalition idea is not really in the spirit of French politics.
Coalition's not in the spirit of French politics, and they've got a budget to pass. Sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? It's not just us here in South Africa who are challenged by the new world order. The distribution of information, people being far more informed than they ever were before, is really shaking up the status quo. France, Britain, America, here at home as well. Well, moving on to the other part of our mandate, which is to bring to you what is happening on the investment markets. Today on the Stock Exchange News Service, bad news in a way for SPAR shareholders. They have taken a hiding in their investment in Switzerland, wrote off 3 billion rand as an impairment on the Swiss operation a year ago, and will be getting back, well, hopefully about half of that. On the other hand, they still have to pay a fine to the Swiss authorities of 683 million rand. It's tough when you go into foreign markets, and SPAR certainly didn't cover themselves in glory on this side. However, the good news is that it is a clean exit and that SPAR will be able to now focus on its other geographies where hopefully it's going to do better. Interesting to see it's even got a joint venture in Sri Lanka. And then Super Group, a company that not too long ago went through a massive restructuring, had a huge injection of capital from shareholders, including Alan Gray, when it was on its knees. Well, it's going through another restructuring. But this time selling its crown jewel, the SG fleet. It's made a distribution of a special dividend to shareholders, and the debt equity ratio has fallen. So in other words, got lots of money, paid off all its debts, paid a lot of money to shareholders, and, well, let's see where it goes to from here. But that is the headline of the Super Group's 2025 financial results, which were released this morning. We're closing off with something else, something different, something very interesting, and that is a skit on how mechanics are trained.
How deep your arm is will determine how much money you're going to charge. This is about the 5,000 rand damage. Right, guys, the most important tool in your toolbox that I'm going to teach you guys today is the whistle. Right? Everybody knows you need to have the right whistle in order to make money as a mechanic. Okay, whistle number one, walk up to the vehicle, say hi to the client. Hi ma'am, how are you doing? Start touching, fiddling, touching things. If you find a little bit of oil, go, yeah. You see what I did there? You're giving them confidence. The water going like, yeah, that's working. Giving it a little. How deep your arm is will determine how much money you're going to charge. Right? Like if you go all the way in, that's a lot of money. Pull it back out. This is like a 500 bucks. But you need to go for the whistle. You need to go. You feel that? Yeah. That is a 500 rand to 1,000 rand whistle. Next whistle, guys. Again, grab some oil, smell it, lick it. Lick it, right? Get it in there. Arm slightly further in. Step back. You see what I did there? You see what I did there? Let them know this is about the 5,000 rand damage. Again, grab some oil. You might have to see a doctor after this, but it's okay. Now, drop in the arm slightly further. Look like you found something. You have to. Let's all have that look. Now pull out your arm and go. That's the whistle, guys. Spanner here gets it. Half the arm goes in, 30,000. Say it with me, guys. 30,000. There we go, right. Oh. Don't want this to be caught in the fan mail. Guys.
Penta Motor Group and Suzuki South Africa would like to remind you that the wild opinions, questionable advice, and general nonsense expressed by the Fripmaster is 100% his own. Any resemblance to logic, reality, and good taste is purely coincidental.
That's just magic. Dankie, Frikmeister. It's I'm off to the Biz News conference now in the next couple of days, so you are in the ever capable hands of my colleague Bronwyn Nielsen. But I'll be back again next week. Until then, from me or from the Biz News team, until tomorrow, cheerio.